Hi, thanks for watching. I am going to be reviewing The Lost Boy of Santa Chionia by Juliet Grimes. And this book, oh my goodness, okay. I took 3 semesters of Italian at Ohio State University. And one of the things that you learn in the 3rd semester is that the dialects of the Italian language in Italy are not like the dialects of English in America. And there's a word that is used in linguistics to refer to how well a different dialect or a different language is understandable by neighboring dialects or languages, and I forgot what the word is, but in Italian, that's not the case. Like, you can go to, like, let's say, New York City, and if you're from Los Angeles, you can still understand what the people from New York City are saying, even if their dialect or local lingo or, you know, the way that they speak or pronounce their words or inflect their words, even though it's slightly different, you can still understand what they're saying. That's not the case with all regions and dialects of Italian. And so as I'm reading this book, I was really excited to be able to pick up on some of the Italian words that they were using. I was like, look, I did actually learn something. But then there were other things that I was like, I have no idea what that means. And one of them was pedimue. And in the book, it's 2 words. It's P-E-D-I space M-M-U. And I've seen it, I had to look it up, and in various places online, it's one word, P-E-D-I-M-M-U. And it's basically means my child. And then Kumari, I might have run into this in my Italian classes, but I don't recall it. And there's not an exact translation into English. It means female friendship that feels like family. It's a beautiful word. We need a word for that in English. But it follows Francesca, also known as Franca or Frank, depending on who she's talking to. Her best friend Alexa calls her Frank. For the most part, everybody else calls her Franca or Franca, with the exception of like these people in Santa Chionia who may not necessarily like her. They call her Maestra, which is teacher, Maestra Francesca. So she's sent to this village. She's on the heels of a separation. She's been separated from her husband for about 1.5 years, I believe, at this point. And she got involved with Save a Child, which is like a mission to get education to places that don't necessarily have education at all, in some cases, in this particular case. And it's the 1960s, I believe. And so she's in this little town in Italy in the 1960s, and most of them are shepherds. Okay, that's another thing. That's another reason it took me so long to get through this book. I'm not saying that the author was being unnecessarily loquacious, verbose, or pretentious. I'm not saying that. And I consider myself well read enough to be able to get through 99% of a book in 99% of most mainstream fiction cases. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to be able to go read like a medical textbook or anything and understand everything in the book, but for the most part, like if I'm reading something for myself and not for a class, I'm able to get through the book without having to look up too many words. Not so in this case. Okay, so some of the words that she used were specific to shepherders. So like scutcher, and this isn't, I wasn't even able to find some of these words in dictionary.com. I had to just scour Google. So scutcher, which is an implement or machine for scutching flax or cotton, or in this case it was hemp, because the lady that Franca goes and stays with Chica, she is constantly messing with hemp to make cards or something. I didn't quite catch what it was that she was doing. And then she, at some point, uses the word weather, not WEATHER, so nothing meteorological, and not WHETHER, not like whether we're going to do this or whether we're going to do that. It's WETHER, and it means a male castrated sheep. So she uses words that are used as nouns that make reference to classical works of literature. So nepenthe, I think that's how you pronounce it, is a drug described in Homer's Odyssey as banishing grief or trouble from a person's mind. So in the book she uses it like she's stressed, and then she references something that she uses as nepenthe to kind of calm herself down. And then there's like feral, not F-E-R-A-L, like my children are feral and undomesticated, not like that. This is F-E-R-U-L-E. It's a flat ruler with a widened end, formerly used for punishing children. Remember, this is in a tiny town in the middle of nowhere that doesn't have access to main roads in Italy in the 1960s. And then truculent, eager or quick to argue or fight, or aggressively defiant. And then there's punctilious, showing great attention to detail or correct behavior. Histrionics, exaggerated dramatic behavior designed to attract attention. And then there's octogenous. Okay. AUTOCHTHONOUS. This word is used throughout the book. It made my brain glitch. It's an inhabitant of a place, indigenous rather than descended from migrants or colonists. So, Native Americans would be octogenous, not Americans as we are now, who are descended from colonists or migrants. She uses sagittate, which is shaped like an arrowhead. It's a word to describe something shaped like an arrowhead. Mollycoddled, which is basically to spoil somebody. So the definition is to treat someone in an indulgent or overprotective way. And if you wanted a replacement for undulating, have pullulating, which is very crowded and lively, or teeming. So all of these reasons lent to why it took me so long to get through this book. And I have to admit, within the first 15% of the book, I was like, this is ridiculous, and I was about to quit. I got about 40% in the first 7 days. But then by then, I was so hooked in the storylines that I finished the last 60% in 3 days. And it helped that I had already gotten through a majority of the words that she used in the book that I didn't understand when I first started reading it. So that helped too. So Franca goes to this small Italian town to start a nursery. This is what she calls it. She calls it a nursery, but it's actually a school where she is going to teach children how to read and write, but also in this Italian town that is cut off from the rest of the world in the 1960s, teach them basic hygiene etiquette, because their mortality rate for children is exorbitant. And so she goes to this town and she stays with this older, prickly lady, Franca, who, if you read the book, you'll get why I said she's prickly, wink wink. It's actually pretty funny. She stays with this prickly old lady named Chica. Sorry. Franca stays with Chica. Franca's the Maestra Franca. So she stays with Chica. Chica, she's kind of a homebody. She stays at home. She has this ongoing feud with her neighbor, Evil Mella. She doesn't necessarily take to Franca immediately, and she does some shenanigans to make Franca's life that much more difficult in this time where she is away from family, friends, and society, culture, because this place is so cut off that when it rains, it floods the roads and they kind of fall down the mountain and there's no way in. You actually have to walk to this place. There's no roads for buses or anything, and it's quite a hike. And she mentions throughout the book how her legs are getting stronger because she has to walk everywhere, and it's all uphill or downhill. And as she is starting this nursery, they make this discovery after the flood that brings down the post office. There's a skeleton that was buried underneath the post office. And she doesn't really think anything of it. I mean, she's standing there along with the other gawkers while they're pulling the skeleton out from underneath the post office. But she doesn't think it's going to have anything to do with her. She's like, oh, well, that's a skeleton. It's not even recent. But then this lady comes up to her, and you're going to have to forgive me because I don't remember the lady's name. I think it was Amelia Volonta. Yes, Amelia Volonta. And she is convinced that the person underneath the post office is her son, Leo. And she's like, I need you to help me because I'm an old lady. Nobody's going to help me. Nobody believes me. He's been missing for so many years. Please help me prove that that's my son. And so Franca, she's kind of taken aback. But she's like, okay. She's like, I'll see what I can do. Well, word gets around that she's looking into this and kind of making inquiries for Amelia. And this other lady, I can't remember her name. It's not going to come to me. She asks for Franca's help also because she thinks that the skeleton underneath the post office is her husband. Now, this lady who thinks that the skeleton is her husband is known throughout the town as being crazy. They said that her husband left her for another woman because she's crazy, that he emigrated to America to be with another woman. And the thing is that Amelia Volonta was told that her son Leo had emigrated to America too, that he went over there and that he just wasn't writing to his mother or sending her money. Now, both of these men owed the local, I don't even know what to call him, mafia head. They owed the local mafia head some money for getting money to emigrate to America. Tito the Wolf. And Tito the Wolf, he sits in this store / bar, I think, all day long drinking milk, maybe. And she sees him, Franca sees him on a regular basis. And when she goes into the store owner doesn't like her. He doesn't think that she should be there. He's one of the people who don't think that they need a school in Santa Chionia. And so he's never really nice to her at all. In fact, there's other patrons in the store that have to go to the bar and call the proprietor to tell him that Frank is there and she needs something. And he'll go up and he'll ask the other person, oh, how can I help you? And they'll be like, okay, well, she's been here first. But every time she sees Tito, she makes a point of nodding to him or saying hello. Now, she's been taught the politics and etiquette of going into a town and trying to insert herself and ingratiate herself into the lives of the locals by a woman named Sabrina. And Sabrina, we never really meet Sabrina, but we get secondhand the tidbits of knowledge and advice that she has given to Franca over the last year and a half of her life. And so Franca at this point is trying to be cordial with everybody. She's trying not to get under anybody's skin. But as she is going through taking applications for children who may or may not come to the nursery or school, she is meeting some interesting people. One of them is Isodonia, and you get the sense that Franca is kind of besotted with Isodonia. Like, the way that she talks about Isodonia is almost in a romantic fashion, but she never really acknowledges it herself. But that's the impression that you get when she's talking about her, is that she's kind of put Isodonia up on this type of pedestal to the point where she has this infatuation with this woman. But Isodonia is married with children, and she wants this woman to come teach at the nursery. And the woman herself admits to having a dream at one point being a teacher. And so she's so sure that she's going to be able to get Isodonia over to the nursery to help her with it. And her kids are going to go there. The thing is that Isidonia's husband is against the idea, and so is her brother. And as time goes on, we start to understand that Isidonia is under the thumb of her husband, and that he is quite violent. But she doesn't give up. Franca doesn't give up on Isidonia, and she keeps going back and back and back and back. And she feels this kinship with Isidonia, and she's so sure they're going to be the best of friends that she just one-track minds it, and that ends interestingly. When she's doing her research, she sends letters to her friend Alexis in America, in Philadelphia, who is working on becoming a lawyer. And she's like, I need you to look up this person, I need you to look up this person. And so Alexis starts looking into it from over there, while Franca basically becomes Nancy Drew in Santa Chionia in Italy. Some of the locals are really excited for the school, and they try to help her when they can, but others are vehemently against it, and she is constantly running into issues. There's, at one point, a tree falls on the nursery, and part of it has to be fixed, and she's fairly certain that it didn't just fall. But when she mentions it to Chica's kind of like, okay, well, it's illegal to cut down trees in Santa Chionia. And she's like, wait a second, what? How is it illegal? Because you have a thriving timber business. And here we get into like what she believes is like a organized crime syndicate happening in this town of shepherds. And everybody's laughing at her for it when she goes to the priest Don Padalemo or Don Padaleone. I got those two confused. That's another thing. The characters that mattered the most, so Franca, Chica, Alexa, Sabrina, Isidonia, they had fantastic character building. You really got vested in these characters, but the other ones that still made an impact to the story, like the crazy lady looking for her husband, and the priest, and even the so-called villains or the alleged villains themselves, like they didn't really make such an impact that I can even remember their names. So I forgot where I was going. So the priest, she's talking to the priest. I forgot where I was going with it, but let me back up. See, this is what happens when you get old. Lately, I've been forgetting words, or my train of thought, just like that. And I swear, I feel like I shouldn't be going through this at 40 something. But it is what it is. So she is trying to help these women. She's trying to start her nursery. There was another storyline in there also. Oh, right. Ugo. So one of the times that she's in this store trying to buy something from the proprietor, and he's ignoring her, Ugo comes up to the front and he's like, hey, she's calling you. And he asks Ugo what he wants first, and he's like, well, she was here before me. She ends up buying some salami to take to Chica, because her and Chica have gotten into another one of their spats. She's constantly in spats with Chica, and she takes it home, and this guy's like walking with her. She's like, I don't need to be walked home. He's like, well, I'm going to see my Aunt Chica. And she's like, oh, okay. So she ends up talking to Ugo, and like you can tell that she's taken by Ugo. Like she's always talking about his derriere. So but she's trying to back off. She's not there to be in a romantic relationship. She's actually still married to Sandro, her husband, that she has been separated from for a year and a half. But she doesn't really do that great of a job staying away from Ugo. So you have these three storylines, and so I was very caught up in this book after the first 40% when I had to calm down with highlighting, because I read this on my Kindle, and I was highlighting all the words that I didn't know and looking them up. So when I finally got past that first 40% or so, I was really hooked on the storyline, and I do feel like she wrapped it up pretty good. There's this part at the end where if you've watched a movie and it's the end sequence and the main character is thinking back, and all of a sudden things start clicking into place in their mind, and it's playing thematic music, and all of a sudden they get it, and you get it, and you're like, oh, that's what happens. So but it was really well worth the read. And this is not her first book. Juliet Grimes wrote the 7 or 8 Deaths of Stella Fortuna. And just the name alone tells me that there's a lot of Italian in there too. It helps to know a little bit of Italian when you're reading her books, apparently. But I would definitely go back and read something else by Juliet Grimes, and I'm sure like as her writing career progresses, because I think this is her second book, as her writing career progresses, she's going to get infinitely better, and like already she writes things that really kind of like hook you into the storylines. So she's definitely an author I'm going to follow. I did enjoy this book. No, it's not fantasy, it's not sci-fi, it's not horror, but it was something that really held my interest, and I enjoyed reading it even though I had to look things up constantly. So read the book. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe below.